All right, let's talk about Doug Pederson, and I want to talk about him as a head coach, because I actually think going through and looking at this data that I came up with, and also just rewatching some film, I think I've come to the conclusion that Doug Pederson is a good hire for the Jaguars. I think I really see why they made this hire. I actually think it's pretty smart, and he could be a perfect fit for just being a guy who can help develop Trevor Lawrence, because that's, it's operation, make Trevor Lawrence look competent in Jacksonville. And I think he should do a good job of doing it. So what I'm going to do is, if you watched my video on Josh McDaniels, I'm basically going to do the same thing, where I look at, using my algorithm of, it involves PFF grades of just figuring out how many, points per drive above expected your talent should have gotten you, and then looking at what actually happened, and obviously luck can play a role in all of that stuff, but let me just show you the chart and we'll understand it more there. So this is the chart. So what we see here is this is year by year, and it's going to be a few different teams because I'm using his, tenure when he was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and also when he was the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid. I'm not using when he was like a, an assistant or anything like that, just coordinator or head coach. And what you see is that, year by year, let's just go through it. So in 2020, the most previous year he was in the NFL, his, the expected points per drive you would expect would be 0.77 points less than average. What actually happened was it was 0.52 less than average. So he overperformed his last year when he got fired and got the brunt of the blame for it. Really, that was kind of a talent issue, and I thought talent made, really was what kind of hurt him more than anything else. In 2019, 2018, and 2017, his teams actually all underperformed, which is interesting because, 2017, they won a Super Bowl, but they slightly underperformed expectations, although overperformed in the playoffs. So I guess that's really what matters, is the postseason. That's what you hope happens. And listen, part of what you have to mention with this stuff is, okay, part of why they, underperformed a little bit was, well, Carson Wentz was awesome that year, and he had a hand in developing Carson Wentz. So if that's the downside for Jacksonville, is that he could develop Trevor Lawrence into being awesome, but then won't get full value, will get just slightly below full value, you'll absolutely take that. And what you'll also absolutely take is those bottom 4 seasons on the chart. So the first season with the Eagles and his 3 seasons as a coordinator for the Chiefs, he overperformed pretty significantly each one of those seasons. All of those seasons, they were projected to be in the negatives, but in only one of those seasons they actually were, 2013, but they still had a third of a point per drive jump, which is a significant jump. So you look at this stuff, and it is overwhelmingly in Pederson's favor. Over the course of his career, he has consistently overperformed expectations, with the exception of a 3-year jump where he slightly underperformed expectations with a very good team where it's harder to overperform expectations. This is the total. So his overall total differential is 1.25. Now, you would have to, it's not total because it's not a cumulative stat, so it doesn't really work that way, but, that's what the total was. This would mean that an average season for him would be, in the past 8 years as a coordinator or a head coach, his teams have overperformed by 0.16 points per drive, which is, it's not nothing. That definitely is something that matters. As a head coach, on average, so it's a cumulative of plus, a quarter of a points per drive, which would mean that, on average in the 5 seasons, we're talking just barely below, 5/100ths of a point per drive. So we're not talking about a massive jump, but still something, and you'd rather him overperform. And I think what really can get you excited if you're a Jacksonville fan is all of those years in Kansas City and that first year in Philadelphia, and even the last year in Philadelphia, when the talent was lacking, but he overperformed the talent. And that's something that is exciting because that's exactly what Jacksonville needs. To go over to a little bit of film, this is kind of a good example of probably why Jacksonville went out and got Doug Pederson. So I'm going to really highlight one linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is in 2016. So this is in his first year as a head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. And really what he does so well, and the benefit of the Doug Pederson scheme, there are some downsides, but the benefit is he can create easy throws for the quarterback to make. That's what allowed Carson Wentz to develop and have some really good years. That's what allowed someone like Nick Foles, who isn't known to be a star, still have success. It's something like this, where you have a linebacker, look at how far over he is towards the middle of the field. So if you run that play now, there's just a quick little screen pass. It seems so simple, but I mean, you can see, because the linebacker is so far over towards the middle of the field, this play can work. Well, why am I highlighting Doug Pederson so much using this play? Because he uses his run scheme to get guys to get closer to the middle of the field, to get guys out of position, and then set up easy throws for his quarterback. And that's just not something Trevor Lawrence had. Look, as you see, Carson Wentz is going to flip this one out to a wide receiver who runs over and picks up a first down due to everyone doing their job. Now, if Jacksonville can do that, this could be a really good thing for Trevor Lawrence, and then of course you hope that you can expand and build off of that. And I should mention that it's not just Doug Pederson who does this stuff. Obviously Frank Reich had a big impact. He was the offensive coordinator there for a good chunk of the time that Pederson was there, but it all works together, and I'm sure Pederson saw what worked and saw what didn't, and will implement what worked for Jacksonville. So sometimes it's not about getting just the best pure head coaching candidate in general, but getting the right guy for the job. Seems like Pederson really could be the right guy for the job. So yeah, again, we can always sit here and say, well, are you the best guy for the job? Should it be someone else that can do it well? That's, again, always debatable. There's always going to be coaches that seemingly feel better. And one thing that definitely, I think, is something that people get hopeful for is when you hire some unknown guy, it's just more exciting. It is, right? When you can hire some just completely unknown guy, it can make you think, oh man, this might be the next Sean McVay. This might be the next, Matt LaFleur, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas Doug Pederson, we know probably isn't going to be a Sean McVay type. But that being said, I mean, it was a legitimate conversation who was better between those two guys. And in fact, there was a moment when it seemed like pretty clear that Doug Pederson was the better of those two, because they both had a similar resume, but Doug Pederson had the Super Bowl win, whereas McVay lost in the Super Bowl. Now, the careers have very much branched off since then. We've seen a bigger sample size, but I do feel like Pederson was the scapegoat when he ended his time in Philadelphia. Not to say that there weren't mistakes he made on top of it. I'm not trying to sit here and say that he was perfect by any means. And I also should mention, on the flip side, it's not the only thing he does well is setting up screen passes. It's, a lot of stuff. The RPOs, starting to use RPOs with a quarterback who isn't known for running the football was a really smart thing. And was it him? Was it Frank Reich? I don't know, but Trevor Lawrence should be able to fit into that pretty well. And actually, there's a lot of, I think, and I mean this in a good way, there are some stylistic similarities with Lawrence and Carson Wentz. So it's not a bad fit whatsoever. And again, the thing that I think I learned the most when making this video is just how well he has done, Pederson has, when he's had a lack of talent, which I do have to mention, it is easier to overperform with bad talent than to overperform with good talent, just because there's more room to grow. But that being said, he's done a very good job over his career. Maybe it was Andy Reid in Kansas City. Maybe. I'm sure that helped. But he called plays, at least for a part of his time in Kansas City. So that alone, I think there's reasons to be optimistic if you're a Jaguars fan. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.